Whoa. Hello. All right, do we got it on? We have it on. Hello, Madison. How are we doing tonight? So we are 27 hours from polls closing. That means we have 27 hours to do more shifts at the doors, on the phones, using our social media, doing everything we can to get people out to vote. First of all, I want to say, Madison, congratulations. We have quadrupled the early vote of 2014. People are fired up, and we are ready to have a great election night. How many people, first of all, have early voted? Make some noise. All right. What we need to do is make sure that the folks that are signing up for shifts, I know you've done a lot already. I can tell because we've quadrupled the early turnout. But one more shift you didn't plan on, one more phone banking, just to make sure we get everyone out, will be the difference of whether we have a 2016 party or we have a 2018 rockin' party where we have a new governor, a new attorney general, some new members of Congress, and a whole lot more. So, first of all, there's a few folks I want to recognize in the audience tonight. I just saw one of them. The head of the Wisconsin Education Association, Duff Martin. Let's recognize Duff. The teachers have been awesome. I was in Reedsburg on Saturday, and 3/4 of the volunteers knocking were a member of the Teachers Union. Thank you so much. Also, the head of Dane County Democrats, Mike Bassford's in the house. Where are you, Mike? Somewhere back there. Thank you, Mike. Representative Sondy Pope is in the house. Sondy, where are you? Up here. There she is. She's my state representative. Thank you. And my old friend and partner in crime, State Senator Mark Miller. There he is. So we have gone through a lot in the last 2 years in this country with Donald Trump. The last year was spent trying to take away our health care and our access to pre-existing conditions. They passed a tax bill where 83% of the money in a decade will go to the top 1% in big corporations. And we have had a culture of corruption in Washington for the last 2 years, from the very top, the White House, through the administration. But that's only been 2 years. Here in Wisconsin, we've had 8 years of Scott Walker. And in 8 years, we have some of the worst roads in the country. We're fighting for money for education, and not enough people have access to health care. And we can change that in 27 hours. So let me tell you who we all get a chance to vote for those of you who haven't voted. At the state level, we are going to elect a new state treasurer in Sarah Godlewski. I don't know if he's here tonight, but we have a great Secretary of State with a heritage that goes all the way back to fighting Bob La Follette. Doug La Follette is our Secretary of State. Right now, we have an Attorney General, Brad Schimmel, who is so busy suing to take away our pre-existing conditions that he can't sign on to lawsuits to fight prescription drug price gouging, and he won't sign on to lawsuits on net neutrality, and he can't even address things like rape kits. That's why in 27 hours, we are going to elect a new Attorney General in Josh Kaul. We have a great ticket for governor and lieutenant governor. I have watched with great admiration Mandela Barnes when he was in the legislature, and watching what he did with a group nationally called Six, working with progressive legislators around the country. And as state superintendent of public education, no one cares more about our children and their education in this state than Tony Evers. We have the opportunity to let Scott Walker get his first job ever in the private sector in 27 hours. And finally, it is a great honor to serve with someone who I have been friends with for a very long time. 25 years ago, I had the great pleasure of serving on the Dane County Board of Supervisors with a then supervisor, Tammy Baldwin. Tammy is smart, hardworking, compassionate. No one cares more about the job she does every single day than Tammy Baldwin. And it is the highest honor I can possibly give anyone when I say she has not changed a bit when she's gone from a county supervisor to a state legislator to a member of Congress to our current and in 27 hours future U.S. Senator. Let's hear it for Tammy Baldwin. But again, anything we do in the next 27 hours to get people out, we'll make sure all those names I just mentioned are elected. And we're going to try to pick up the state Senate in Wisconsin. We're going to pick up seats in the state legislature. But we have work to do. It is now, though, my great honor to introduce one of the names I just mentioned, someone who is a rising star in the Democratic Party, someone who will take our office of state treasurer and give it real respect and responsibility. And I am honored to introduce that person who will be the next state treasurer, Sarah Godlewski. Let's hear it for Sarah Godlewski.
Give it up for our awesome Congressman Mark Pocan. All right, Madison, are you ready to take back our state tomorrow? That's great. That makes two of us. I will tell you, I had the honor of actually traveling some of the tour of change that I know we're all ready for, and being on the school bus with Tony and Mandela. And it was funny because we were trying to do a video to talk about what we were doing, and my phone was bouncing around so badly because of the Scott holes that somebody asked me if we were actually in an earthquake. And I'm like, no, this is just the roads in Wisconsin. So I cannot wait to elect new leadership in Wisconsin. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sarah Godlewski, running to be your next state treasurer. You know, it's nice. We don't always get that kind of round of applause when you talk about finance. People are usually like, oh, I don't know about that. But I am proud to say, you know, one of the reasons why I got involved in this race in the beginning was because Scott Walker actually tried to eliminate this office earlier this year because, you know, checks and balances are so overrated. Who needs them? Well, I am proud to say that we stopped Scott Walker's power grab with 62% in April, and we're going to do the exact same thing tomorrow. So just in case you're talking to any of your friends and they're like, well, what does that state treasurer role even do? I just want to highlight two things. The first are any one of you taxpayers in this crowd? Any of you guys pay tax dollars? So literally within the last month, we've seen $47 million missing from the Department of Transportation budget. We saw $600,000 that we overpaid to Medicaid, and then we double paid a contractor $400,000. Now, that's just literally within the last couple of weeks, and here's what's killer. They think we don't need accountability and transparency in our government. Enough is enough, and you know what? On November 6th, we're going to end that and bring accountability and transparency with our tax dollars. And then the second thing is, anybody here have student loan debt? Anybody? So student loan debt in the state of Wisconsin impacts 1 million people, and literally last year, interest rates were up to 15%. This is absolutely ridiculous, and here's the killer. Is that unlike your home or your car, you can't refinance student loans. I mean, when I had student loan interest, it was 9%, and I was almost paying $1,000 a month in interest alone. It's ridiculous. But you know what? We can stop big corporations and predatory lending that's happening because the state treasurer helps to invest money, and we can actually invest in our people because we can buy high-interest student loans and refinance it at a lower rate. Imagine that, actually allowing young people to get ahead. So I'm not going to bore you anymore with all these financial ideas, but I do want to talk about, thanks, appreciate that. But I do want to talk about one thing with regard to money, and that's how much money has been spent against us. Literally, special interests and corporations are spending millions against Tammy, Tony, and Democrats up and down the ticket. Why? Because they're afraid that we're going to be working for working people. But here's the deal. You know what? It's working people that win elections, and that's what's going to happen tomorrow. So I just have, well, first I have to ask, how many people have voted? All right, a round of applause for those of you that have voted. Because you voted, I have two requests. The first request I have is when you talk to people, please make sure you vote up and down the ticket. I mean, some years we can have, as Democrats, up to 25% of a drop-off rate for some of our races. I mean, I was told that, I believe it was in 2008, Barack Obama won 55 assembly districts, but we literally only took 43 of them at the assembly level because we didn't vote the entire ticket. And this worries me because in order for us to really work for working families, we have to do it together when we want to govern. That means up and down the ticket. And thanks. And then the second thing is, if you haven't talked to somebody about who you're voting for and why, please do so. Because I know that you guys love getting all those emails from us. And you're soon going to be getting some robocalls, I know. But the most effective way to convince people to vote is by directly talking to them. Literally, people are 3 times more likely to vote for who you talk to about them with. And so, if you're looking for names, Sarah Godlewski's one. Tony Evers is another. Tammy Baldwin is another. Mandela and Josh Call. So with that, are you with me, Madison, to elect this ticket on tomorrow? All right. Well, with that, I have the honor of introducing our next Attorney General and my friend, Josh Call. So please give a round of applause to Josh Call.
Hello, Madison. Who's ready for new leadership here in Madison? And who's ready for a change of direction in Wisconsin? It's great to be here. I'm Josh Call. I grew up in Oshkosh and Fond du Lac. I managed in high school to score 1 touchdown as the fullback for the Fondy Cardinals. It was from 1 yard out, but it counts as a touchdown all the same. And I grew up in a family that was deeply involved in public service. And I had the opportunity to spend part of my career in public service as well. I was a federal prosecutor in one of the most dangerous cities in the country. I prosecuted gang members, drug traffickers, and murderers, and worked to make communities safer. I've also gone to court to challenge laws that restrict access to voting. I've gone to trial in Arizona and Ohio and North Carolina and Virginia. But the voting rights case I'm most proud of is one here in Wisconsin where we challenged more than a dozen different restrictions on voting that were enacted just in Scott Walker's first term in office, as well as a law that limited early voting to 1 location per municipality. And after nearly 2 weeks of trial in federal court, a federal court judge struck down restrictions on voter registration and restrictions on early voting. And in 2018, we have had far more early voting in Wisconsin than we did in 2014. So thank you. Now that case is still on appeal, so it is important that we elect legislators who are going to vote for expanded access to early voting and voter registration in Wisconsin. I'm also a husband, I'm a dad, and I want my family and families across the state to live in a Wisconsin that is safer and stronger than we're on track for right now. And there is so much that an effective Attorney General can do to help move us in the right direction on a number of issues. But unfortunately, we haven't had effective leadership under our current Attorney General. I think we need an AG who's going to be a leader when it comes to fighting crime and getting justice for Wisconsinites. Because we need to start responding to our opioid epidemic like the crisis it is. We need an attorney general who understands that eliminating our backlog of untested rape kits should have been a priority on day one, and who's going to make it a priority to get justice for survivors of sexual assault. And we need an attorney general who's not going to suggest that we consider arming teachers, or who's going to criticize our gun-free school zones, but who's going to fight for common sense gun safety measures like universal background checks and a ban on bump stocks. And let me also just say that as Attorney General, I will fight against any effort to arm teachers in Wisconsin. We also need an Attorney General who is going to seriously and even-handedly enforce the laws that protect our environment and the laws that protect consumers here in Wisconsin. You know, under our prior Attorney General, J.B. Van Hollen, a Republican, we collected far more in fines from polluters than we have under our current Attorney General. And it would be great if that was because pollution had decreased dramatically in Wisconsin. But right now in Kewaunee County, far too many families have to worry that when they turn on the tap, brown water is going to come out. I believe that in Wisconsin in 2018, no parent should have to worry about the safety of the water that their kids are drinking, and that when polluters break the law and make a mess, they should be held accountable. And we also need an Attorney General who is going to be independent and a watchdog, who's going to stand up against public corruption, who's going to ensure that Foxconn lives up to the terms of the deal that it struck. And we need an Attorney General who's going to stand up for our rights and protections. You know, Congressman Pocan mentioned net neutrality. More than 20 AGs stepped up when net neutrality was eliminated. Mark Pocan and I held a press conference calling on our current AG to join that challenge. His response was that the lawsuit was frivolous. When the birth control mandate that's part of the Affordable Care Act was rolled back, a number of AGs spoke out, but our AG said nothing. And when protections for students who were defrauded by predatory for-profit colleges were rolled back by Betsy DeVos, a number of AGs took action, but our AG, once again, was nowhere to be found. Our current AG has had a fundamentally different approach to the office than the one that I'm talking about. His first Deputy Attorney General was a corporate lobbyist who, after serving as Deputy AG, went back into lobbying and was one of the lobbyists on the Foxconn deal. And he has gotten the state involved in suits that don't serve the interests of hardworking Wisconsinites. That includes a lawsuit challenging overtime pay, guaranteed overtime pay, for people who put in the hours and make between about $23,000 and $47,000 a year. He's fought against overtime pay for middle-class families in Wisconsin. And he is one of the leaders right now of a lawsuit that's seeking to invalidate the Affordable Care Act. If that suit is successful, protections will be eliminated for people with a pre-existing condition, and young adults will lose the guarantee that they can remain on their parents' coverage until they turn 26. I think we need an Attorney General who's going to fight to expand access to affordable health insurance coverage in Wisconsin. And as AG, I'm going to seek to withdraw the state of Wisconsin from that lawsuit. And that's not the only place our AG has wasted our tax dollars. You may have heard that he spent about $83,000 of taxpayer money on promotional materials. That includes promotional stress balls. It includes money that was spent on custom-made fortune cookies, which I didn't even know existed until this campaign. And most famously, he spent nearly $10,000 of taxpayer money on gold-plated commemorative coins with his name on them. You know, I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and in my household, if you're going to spend money on fake coins, they better have chocolate inside, or you're going to be in serious trouble. But in all seriousness, our Attorney General in his first 2 years in office spent nearly $10,000 on fake coins, and only 9 of the kits in our rape kit backlog were tested. To me, that is the definition of misplaced priorities. So we need new leadership in our Attorney General's office. And that's not the only place we need new leadership. We need a new state treasurer here in Wisconsin. We also need to elect Tony Evers as the next governor in Wisconsin. We need to re-elect Tammy Baldwin to the United States Senate. And we need a new lieutenant governor, and I have the privilege of introducing your next lieutenant governor, Mandela Barnes.
Hello, Madison. It is time for a change. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, everyone else. Thank you all for being with us today. I am here just to deliver one message, and that is we are going to defeat Scott Walker on November 6th, which is tomorrow. So I am so excited to be a part of this ticket. We are working hard. We're just wrapping up our school bus tour for change. And they said, hey, well, Mandela, we're going on a bus tour. I got a little bit excited. And then they said, we're going on a school bus. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. It is interesting being on a school bus for that long. But there are two very unique observations. One, if you haven't been on a school bus in a while, you really get a feel of the quality of the roads. But at the same time, Tony has always stated since the beginning of this campaign that what's best for our kids is best for our state. And so as we get around the state, we see so many exciting things. People are pumped up. The crowds just aren't in Madison and Milwaukee. They're all over the place, in all corners. Some people say there's Tony Mentum. Some say there's Pandatonium. I personally like Evers Fever. Whatever you want to call it, it is real, and I am just excited to be a part of it, and I'm glad to have you all along on the ride with us. And we know that in the final stages of this campaign, in the final hours, obviously this campaign can't be about all the bad things Scott Walker's done wrong. There's just not enough time to talk about it. This election, again, will be decided by our positive vision for the state of Wisconsin. How do we move forward? This is about how we move forward as a state. How do we restore hope and opportunity all across Wisconsin, in all 72 counties, in every community? And it starts by expanding health care, making sure that we increase access to quality and affordable health insurance across the state of Wisconsin. And so not only, this is an issue area where the governor had the chance to make the right decision. He decided not to. He failed the people of Wisconsin. He could have taken the Medicaid expansion. He chose not to. That is $1.1 billion left on the table. Doesn't even count the 77,000 to 80,000 people who could be covered under Badger Care. And the $1.1 billion is the money that we actually pay to the federal government, that the governor said no. This is our money, and I want it now. We've all seen the commercial, but this is our reality. So, first order of business, we take the Medicaid expansion, we expand Badger Care, and we also work to create a public option for Badger Care in the first term so that we can have health care for all in the state of Wisconsin. And, while we're there, we need to go even further. And that's why it's important that we elect Josh Call to be our next Attorney General, because Josh is someone who will not be afraid to take on the big pharmaceutical companies for driving up the cost of prescription drugs. Josh Call as Attorney General is someone who's going to hold the drug companies accountable for their contribution to the opioid crisis in this state as well. I actually met Josh when I was in the assembly. He was working to challenge our state's voter ID law. And it will be just such a refreshing day when we have an attorney general who wants to expand voting rights in the state of Wisconsin and not take them away. And I'm so happy that he talked about early voting numbers, because if you haven't noticed, I did a little digging and I saw the data. And the vote share, because we know what this election is going to come down to. If younger people show up, if communities of color show up, we're going to win. And early vote totals show that the increase from 2014 to 2018 for early voters between the age of 18 and 29 is 758% increase. Thirty to 39-year-olds up 547% as well. And you know, I know you look at Tony and you're like, hey, those two young guys are really doing it. They're really getting their friends out to vote. It's Tony's birthday. I'm so happy to be celebrating it with him. And our average age was 48 and a half years old, but now it's 49 years old. But we are doing everything we can. This has been so fun. Like I said, we've been getting around. We've been promoting our positive vision. We've talked about our plan for healthcare, our plan for education. And sometimes Tony, he just gets in a zone. He goes all the way out there. He's like, Mandela, I think we should have scientists in the Department of Natural Resources. It's like, slow down, Tony. We're going to lose people. But clean air, safe drinking water, that has to be a priority of this administration. And when you have elected officials, as we do, that don't believe in climate change, in this climate, we have to change those elected officials. So we are working constantly, because we also need to make sure that we're making an economy, creating an economy that works for everybody, not just the ultra wealthy. Corporations have written the rules in this state, and that's why the bulk of tax breaks have gone to the largest corporations. They've also gone to the most wealthy individuals. But it's time that we work to expand the middle class in Wisconsin. It starts with raising the minimum wage. Not only do we raise the minimum wage, we work to make sure that it does not matter if you are a public sector employee or a private sector employee, you should have the right to collectively bargain. And we have to invest in what works. If you look across the country, job creation is happening in renewable energy. And Wisconsin has to be a leader in investing in renewable energy. We can't continue just to pour billions of dollars into companies like Foxconn. And that's also, again, why we need to make sure that we have strong leadership. And I'm so proud to also be running with Sarah Godlewski, because, you know, I don't think anybody in this room has ever been excited about a treasurer's race before this year. but and honestly, that says everything about her. It says everything about her and the kind of candidate that she is and the energy that she's bringing to this ticket. And not only does she fight to make sure that we keep the office, she's going to work hard to make sure that we restore integrity back to that office as well. So everyone in this room, I know many of you have early voted, many of you have the plan to vote tomorrow, but we have to make sure that we drive turnout to historic levels. We have to talk to our friends, our family members, our neighbors. We have to talk to everyone. If you've talked to all of them, it's time to start talking to strangers on the street. Anyone you come in contact with, you need to be trying to get them to the polls tomorrow, because that's how we're going to win. So if you're ready for a new day in the state of Wisconsin, if you're ready for opportunity in every community, if you want to make sure that we are a state that's open for everyone, not just open for business as Governor Walker would have it, if you want this to be a state that we can all be proud of once again, you will help us do whatever you can do. And this will be our victory. When I say we, I mean all of us, not just Tony and myself, not just the ticket. This is about everyone in this room. This is about restoring government and returning it back to the people. And it is definitely time for a change. I'm ready for it. I know you're ready for it. I know we're all ready to send Scott Walker packing. I know that we are ready for Tony Evers to be the next governor of the state of Wisconsin. And as much as we need change in the state of Wisconsin, there is always an outlier. There is always one thing that I'm just okay with being the same, and that is my U.S. Senator. That is Tammy Baldwin. I had the honor of being on the ballot my very first election in 2012 with Tammy. I'm so honored to be on the ballot with her during her re-election here in 2018, and she has been a champion for us. She has fought for us, not the special interests. And again, I said, we're not going to talk about all the things going wrong, but you do not want her opponent to go to the U.S. Senate. She's already in the state Senate. That's way too far. So what we need to do, in addition to making sure we elect Tony Evers as governor, making sure we elect Josh Kaul as attorney general, Sarah Godlewski as our state treasurer, electing your resident member of the assembly, or excuse me, candidate for the assembly that's a Democrat or state senate, we are going to send Tammy Baldwin back to D.C. to continue fighting for us. So if you're ready for a change but still want to keep this the same as I am, you will join me in welcoming my senator, your senator, our champion in Washington, D.C., Tammy Baldwin, everybody.
Thank you so much, Mandela. The next lieutenant governor of the state of Wisconsin. Oh, I just wanted to check and see how many people are here. Now I can see you all. That's excellent. You're awesome. Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you. So I know this is startling, but Washington is a mess. It's noisy, chaotic. There's distractions. There's dysfunction. I don't know how many of you are on social media, but I have to say I brace myself every morning before I look at my Twitter feed. What could he have tweeted in the wee hours of the morning that might take up the news cycle for a couple hours, a couple days, a week? What about watching those cable news shows of people shouting? When Washington isn't working, it means it's not working for Wisconsin, it's not working for you or your families or your community. But don't get me wrong. I want you to know that Washington is working pretty darn well for one group. The wealthy and the powerful special interests. And I offer you as Exhibit A, probably the best example we've seen in years, is that tax measure that passed late last year. They told you, the proponents of this thing told you that it was going to be for working people in the middle class. 83% of the benefits over the life of this bill are going to go to the top 1% on the individual side and mega corporations, multinational corporations on the corporate side. Just catch this one. One company, ExxonMobil, one company will get a bigger tax break in the first year of this bill than every Wisconsinite combined. Every Wisconsin individual and family combined. How can you talk about that as a tax cut for the working people or middle class? They also said it'll pay for itself. And it is hard to make a $1.9 trillion mathematical or estimation error. But that's what they did, unless they just weren't telling the truth, right? And they were saying, wait, don't worry about the fact that the breaks don't go immediately and directly to working people in the middle class. And don't worry that it's not paid for. It'll trickle down. Well, most of the breaks have been used for dividend payouts and stock buybacks. It is not indirectly helping raise wages of the very workers who made the profits, right? Workers have to have a bigger say in corporate governance, I might add, as an aside. So, and now I just want to, it like piles on and piles on. It's not directed towards the working people. It's not trickling down for working people. And then this price tag, this $1.9 trillion price tag that Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate, noticed last week when they said that the deficit had gone up 17%. Well, rather than going to the root cause of that, he's saying let's put Social Security and Medicare on the table. Those are earned benefits. Earned benefits. Workers pay into that throughout their working lives. So this thing becomes a hit and another hit and then a hit on the retirement security of working people in this country. Now, I make this point, and I told you more about the tax bill than I intended to. I make this point because when Washington isn't working for us and it's so chaotic and it's noisy, it doesn't mean that some people don't make out pretty big. And the tax bill is exhibit number 1. They hired, and always do, an army of lobbyists to get their way, to rig the system, to try to pass legislation that serves their profits and their interests, right? I've seen something in the past 2 years that I hadn't seen before, and that's their engagement in elections. Same folks, but instead of hiring lobbyists to talk to elected officials, they're trying to buy senators and governors and others to do their bidding. Now, I know I'm in Madison, so when I say this, it might surprise you a little bit, but the Koch brothers network funded a super PAC that throughout the course of this campaign has spent $14 million trying to defeat me. Now, the reason I say this may surprise you is because apparently even the Koch brothers are smart enough not to buy in this media market. But join me in Green Bay or Wausau or La Crosse or Eau Claire or Milwaukee, and they will say, my gosh, Tammy, you are just being bombarded with these ugly and negative messages. And it happened before I even had an opponent. And I kind of asked my colleagues in the Senate, can you tell me how you run against a super PAC? I mean, I haven't figured this out. But I share all this because they already have enough power. And to try to find someone who will do their bidding in the United States Senate is wrong. To try to buy voters in Wisconsin is wrong. But I finally stopped fretting about all of this. It's like, this is not doing any good. And I decided I'm going to just wear this as a badge of honor. Because they figured out that I'm not afraid of them. And I'm not going to be ever afraid to stand up to them and fight for you. So, that's right. That's right. And there are so many examples that I could give of their power and their oversized influence. I'm going to talk about health, but just think about, I've been fighting for Buy America policies, and I've usually succeeded in the Senate only to see it plucked out in the House when Paul Ryan gets visited by multinational corporations saying, oh, we're not interested in this Buy America policy with taxpayer dollars. And when we're trying to do what Sarah's going to do at the treasurer's level here in the state, to pass a bill that finally says students can refinance their student debt to lower interest rates. I've joined up with Elizabeth Warren and others on that measure for years now, but it hasn't gone through. Why? Well, maybe the lending industry isn't too interested in having it go through. So I could give you examples on all of these issues, but I'm going to talk about health care. When I was a child growing up in this very community, I was raised by my grandparents, and I was very lucky to have them. I had a very serious childhood illness at age 9, akin to spinal meningitis. That wasn't the exact diagnosis, but it was similar and I can't pronounce the real diagnosis. So I was in the hospital here in Madison for 3 months. And my grandparents were wonderful. They were by my side saying, get better, get better. I learned many years afterwards, because they wouldn't have burdened me with this at the time, that their insurance, they were sort of in a conflict with the hospital and the insurance company because their insurance didn't specifically cover grandchildren. You know, I wasn't a legal dependent. And so what I do know, while I don't know how that resolved itself or how much my grandparents paid out of their own pocket, what I do know is they said, let's fix this. Let's get our granddaughter health insurance. And they looked for an individual policy. Well, I was a kid with a pre-existing health condition. And there weren't a lot of insurance companies. In fact, there weren't any that were really keen on insuring somebody who had just been in the hospital for 3 months. And so I spent a lot of my youth without insurance, and I just grew up believing that was wrong, that it was outrageous for any parent or grandparent or foster parent or family to have to wonder if an illness or an injury could cause them bankruptcy or what they would do. And so it became my calling, I guess, my fight. And I ran for office so I could help change this. So imagine my honor in the House of Representatives in 2010 when I'm on a committee that's writing the Affordable Care Act. Now, if I had had a magic wand, it would have looked a little different. But politics is compromise. But there were two things that really were so important and such milestones in our country. The first was our ability to write a law that said insurance companies can't discriminate against you because you've been sick before. Right? And then I take personal pride in the amendment that I drafted in the committee and passed in the House, allowing young people to stay on their parents' health insurance until they're 26. Now, we know that that law has been under incredible attack at the state level and the national level ever since it was passed. And I want to tell you Jenny's story to let you know what the threat is, but also what the hope is. I met Jenny just about 4 months ago up in Oshkosh at a campaign event. And I told my pre-existing condition story, as I often do. And she came up to me afterwards and she goes, that really touched me. She said, I want to tell you my story. So Jenny and her husband Larry have 2 children, Pearl and Cass. Cass, at 17, had a cancer diagnosis. And they recommended a very intense chemotherapy regimen. Jenny and her son Cass basically just moved into Children's Hospital. Jenny wanted to be by his side during all of the chemotherapy and just cheer him on. And the rest of the family came and visited whenever they could. So Jenny tells me that she's in his hospital room on election night 2016. And she sees, you know, there's a little television in the room, and she's not paying much attention to it because she spent the last several months just focused on her son and helping him to get better. But she kind of looks at the TV screen and goes, oh my gosh, that's not what I was expecting, right? You know, the polls said different outcomes. So she's watching the Wisconsin results come in, and then she sees, you know, race declared for Donald Trump. She's like realizing that Donald Trump was going to be the next president. And she told me that she just burst into tears. She was terrified. Now, she and her husband Larry have health insurance. And she knew that health insurance and access to it had been under attack ever since the Affordable Care Act passed. And she knew there was a wall there because Barack Obama would never have signed a bill repealing or defunding the Affordable Care Act. And she knew that was just about to change. And she was terrified that if they ever had to pay this bill themselves, they're upper middle class family, but it would have absolutely been unaffordable for them. But she also knew that her son Cass was going to have that label of having a pre-existing health condition for the rest of his life. And so there's three really positive things that come out of this story. Number one, Cass has been in remission for 21 months, and I just saw him last week. And no, I didn't count this at first, but I think I have to count this as another thing. And he reminded me last week that he's now 19 and he can vote. But the most important thing I want you to know from this story, and the point that I'm trying to make, is on that night in 2016, the entire family became activists, organizers, agitators, marchers. I mean, they wrote letters to their elected officials. They told their story on the media, and they said, never on our watch are we going to allow this to happen, or at least we're going to do everything we can to stop the repeal of health care protections. And I saw Jenny and her family's story replicated all over this state and all over this country. Not necessarily on health care, but other things that we hold dear. All of these things are on the ballot right now. You're going to see a bunch of names if you haven't voted yet, but it's not about Tammy Baldwin. It's not about Tony Evers. It's not about Mandela Barnes. It's not about Josh Kaul. It's not about Sarah Godlutsky. It's about the fact that health care is on the ballot, that education is on the ballot, that justice is on the ballot. Our environment is on the ballot. Our dreamers are on the ballot. Net neutrality is on the ballot. And families like Jenny are going to elect their champions, and they're going to do everything they can to not elect their obstacles. I want to end by welcoming on the special guest because of a certain celebration we're having on election night eve. How perfect planning. Tony's mom. But I want you to know how important it is for me at the national level to have partners in the state. Partners at every level of government. I talked about health care. It's hugely important that I have someone to work with in the governor's office who's going to expand Medicaid, who's going to show leadership and get us out of that terrible lawsuit. It is so important to me to have partners at all levels. So as Sarah said, vote from the top of the ticket to the bottom of the ticket. Get anyone you know who hasn't voted out. It's all about turnout. And join me in welcoming the next governor of the state of Wisconsin, Tony Evers.
Hello, Madison. Hello, Madison. Thank you. Thank you, Madison. Thank you, Madison. Thank you. And I have to tell you, we happy birthday. Beautiful. That was beautiful. And Mandela and I are now 49 years old. So, first of all, I just have to say this about Tammy Baldwin. We are so blessed in the state of Wisconsin to have a leader like her that we can count on to fight the fight for Wisconsinites every single day. So, Tammy, thank you so much. Now, I just want to start on a somber note. Many of you know Phil Neuenfeld, who passed away last night, real leader of the union movement and the labor movement in the state of Wisconsin and across the country, passed away, and a very close person to my campaign and all the other campaigns that you're here tonight. So, moment of silence for Phil. Thank you. Now, I'm going to be your next governor. Thank you. Yes! Thank you so much. A lot of things to talk about, and I know you've been standing a long time, so I'll kind of cut to the chase here. But we've been on a six-day bus ride all across the state. I think about 1,600 miles. I can't even remember. We've crisscrossed the state several times. And yes, as I think it was Sarah talked about, we hit every freaking Scott hole in the state of Wisconsin. Every one of them. I was so glad to have this over. But the good news, we met great people just like you all across the state of Wisconsin, and it's a true pleasure. Now, I just want to say up front, we talked about a lot of things that are on the ballot. And I know if you look down the street at University of Wisconsin-Madison, you see all the cranes, you see all the young people, you see all the good things that are happening. But I can tell you the University of Wisconsin system itself is on the ballot. You need to think about that. Scott Walker took $250 million out of the University of Wisconsin system. We now spend more for corrections than we do in our University of Wisconsin system. He took away student voice, and clearly he took away faculty and staff voice. That's an issue. I can tell you right now, we're going to return student voice, faculty voice, and money to the University of Wisconsin system. It's the most important economic driver that we have in the state. We cannot lose it, and we're in the process. Now, the good thing is this: as governor, as you know, as governor, I will be replacing Board of Regent members. Next spring, there's 3 of them off, and I think 2 of the Board of Regent or student Regent members will be off, so that's 5, and me, because I'll be taking the governor's chair. So I'll be able to replace 6 of them in 1 year. We have to have that leadership. We have to. Now, let's talk about K through 12 education. And Scott Walker did 2 things when he came to office. The first thing he did, he was just down the road a piece in Beloit, I think. He said to one of his largest benefactors, by golly, you know what? We're going to divide and conquer. He spent 8 years trying to divide us. He has not conquered us. He has not conquered us. He has not conquered us. And if you think of it, if you think of what he did, he made all public employees, especially our teachers, the enemy. And he even compared them to the enemy when he was running for president. He said, those kindergarten teachers marching around the Capitol, if I can take them on, by God, I can take ISIS on. Just think of that. Words matter, Scott Walker. Words matter. We're going to change this in 1 day. Yes, indeed. Words matter. We're going to give voice back. We're going to value the profession. We're going to value public employees. Now, he also happened to take $800 million out of our K through 12 system. Now, the good news is this: I've already prepared my budget for the next 2 years. It's going to have a $1.5 billion increase. We're going to value those kids that struggle the most. Kids from poverty, kids with disabilities, kids that are English learners, those kids that need after-school programs, kids that need mental health therapy. All those people are going to be, we're going to lift kids up that struggle. We have to. And absolutely, it's time for a change. And the good news is this. In the past, I'd prepare my budget, and all my good friends from the department who are here, and we hand it off to Governor Walker, and he would throw it away. This time, I get to hand it to myself as governor, and we're going to give it to those great Democratic legislators, and we're going to fully fund our schools. Now, Mandela said it's too short of a time. We only have a couple hours to talk about Scott Walker a lot. But I just have to tell you, think about what happened with him over the last couple of weeks. He's had 4 of his top lieutenants, people that he vetted, people that were providing him advice and counsel, leading large state agencies. They're no longer with him. Unlike with President Trump, when his people leave, they go anonymous. These people will say, this is what they say about our good governor. He lies, has no integrity. He puts his own political ambitions ahead of the people of Wisconsin. Think about that. And then they endorse me. How about that? How about that, Scott Walker? It's time for a change. Now, we just have to think about that, how that played out. Scott Walker ran for president. And I can tell you, I am never going to run for president. Never. So what he does is he decides, in order to be one of those 18 folks that were on the stage with him, he had to be against the Affordable Care Act. So he goes on the road, tries to become president, spends $30 million in 6 weeks, and gets 0.5% of the vote in Iowa. Now, that would be laughable, and it is. But think of what happened when he came back to Wisconsin. He did not take the money that we need from the federal government that would have given us an affordable and accessible health care system. He said, no way, we're not taking that. His political ambitions and what he did to the people of Wisconsin, it's half the price for the Affordable Care Act in Minnesota than it is in Wisconsin. Think about that, because of his political ambitions. The good news is this. We're going to take that Medicaid money, first thing we can do. Absolutely. Now, in something that I had never imagined was physically possible, the last couple of weeks, Scott Walker has been talking out of both sides of his mouth simultaneously. In one hand, he's saying those pre-existing conditions, the protections for them. I'm one of those 2.4 million people. I'm a cancer survivor. And I'm going to beat Scott Walker. I beat cancer. I can beat him. Now, so what he does is this. On the one side of his mouth, he says, I care for those people. We're going to always guarantee that they will have those protections, even though he couldn't do it when the legislature had it, couldn't get it passed. And then at the same time, out of this side of his mouth, he's saying, we're in federal court. We're going to get rid of the Affordable Care Act along with those pre-existing conditions. I would say that's probably a lie. I don't want to say that out loud, but I think that'd be a lie. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to guarantee people to have those protections, period. I've never wavered from that. I'm not talking out of both sides of my mouth. So, the really radical thing we're going to do is we're going to bring science back to the state of Wisconsin. Think about that. Scott Walker put science in some sort of science prison someplace outstate. We're going to give it a get-out-of-jail-free card. We're bringing it back to Wisconsin. We're actually going to hire scientists at the Department of Natural Resources, have an independent DNR secretary, and we're going to start cleaning up our act. For 8 years, we have sold off our most precious resource, kids and our grandkids are first. Our second most important resource is our water and our natural resources and our parks. We've sold it off to the highest bidder, whether it's big farms in Kewaunee County, whether it's issues around high capacity wells in central Wisconsin or frac mining in western Wisconsin. We must balance that with science. I'm a former science teacher. I believe in the scientific method. And I cannot wait to make this happen in the state of Wisconsin. It is time for a change, folks. Thank you. Thank you. So, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to win tomorrow. Oh, you need some help, Tammy. We don't want anybody on fire here. We got the fever, but we don't have fire. All right. Well, what the hell? We're going to win tomorrow. Here we go. Thank you. Thank you. Now, I can complete my speech with my friends on the stage with me. I can tell you that this is such an important election, and we are going to take on these issues not because they're Democratic issues, not because they're Wisconsin issues, because they reflect Wisconsin values, which our governor does not. Period. And we are, and you know, sometimes, and I hate to say this in this crowd, but sometimes Democrats say, what the hell is he about? Is he a moderate or is he liberal? I can tell you this. We're going to spend every single day we can in this office to make sure that we bring the people the health care they need, the good education they need, the good infrastructure they need, and the science they need. That is what we're going to be focusing on. So whatever we do, call it, that's what we're going to do. So, folks, we just have a couple hours left, and I know there's people there with clipboards that are going to want you to sign up and help, and I know you've all done that, and we appreciate that. But every minute counts in this race. It is very close. And I've said this many times, you probably know people that haven't voted for a while. Call them up and get them out to vote. You probably know people that are saying, oh my God, I don't know who to vote for. Just tell them to vote for Evers. Let's just do it. I've done it in my family, and they've done it to me. It can happen in your family too. So please help us out this last few moments. We have a great group of people up here, and I couldn't be prouder to be part of them. So let's go win.